Join the Thinking in English Conversation Club right now. For just $2 a week, you can join with other English learners, practice speaking, have conversations, enjoy yourself, and use new vocabulary. We run conversation clubs every Tuesday and Thursday at 12 p.m, 6 p.m, and 9 p.m. UK time. So there's no excuse. You can join, and you should join right now. Join the Thinking in English Conversation Club, link in the description. Hello, I'm Tom Wilkinson, and welcome to the Thinking in English podcast, a podcast for intermediate to advanced level English learners. Today, I want to talk about imposter syndrome. This is a condition that has affected me and affects millions of language learners every year. I want to explain it, discuss its causes and signs, and offer you all some tips on how to cope and overcome such imposter feelings. You can find the full transcript for free over on the Thinking in English blog. Check out my YouTube channel and Instagram page, both called Thinking in English Podcast. Join my conversation groups on Patreon, and leave a like, rating or review wherever you are listening right now. Here is today's episode. Imposter syndrome is a term used to describe a person who feels they aren't as capable as others think, and fears they will be exposed as a fraud. It is not an actual recognized mental health condition, but has entered our vocabulary, and many people identify with feeling like an imposter. According to the dictionary, an imposter is a person who pretends to be someone else in order to deceive others, especially for fraudulent gain. The reason I want to write and talk about imposter syndrome on the podcast today is because I suffer with imposter syndrome all the time. My whole life I felt as though I'm not as intelligent, as skilled, or as capable as other people. I always remember my first day at university. I attended a good university in the UK, and I had a lot of intelligent classmates. In our first class, a modern history lecture, I was so intimidated by everyone else. They seemed so articulate or good at speaking. They already knew a lot of information, and they spoke confidently and clearly. I felt like an imposter. I felt inferior and like I didn't belong. I wasn't articulate. I didn't know anything about this topic, and I couldn't speak confidently or clearly. And this feeling of being an imposter caused stress and anxiety, a lot of stress and anxiety. While this feeling of being an imposter never really went away completely, I've been suffering from it again over the past few weeks. Why have I been feeling like an imposter recently? Well, thinking in English. I started thinking in English as a hobby 2.5 years ago, and I had no intention for it to become my job. I never thought I would have an audience. But now there are tens of thousands of people around the world listening to every episode, and hundreds of people joining my conversation groups, reading my articles, and messaging me for advice. I have once again started to feel like an imposter. I doubt my abilities, question why people listen to me, and think that one day everyone will realize that I'm an imposter and stop listening. In December, I had a lot of people joining Patreon and the Conversation Club, and this is what triggered my current imposter syndrome. Imposter syndrome has left me doubting myself and questioning everything that I do. And I'm not alone. I know that thousands of you listening today probably have felt like an imposter before. In fact, one study found that 70% of people have felt like imposters in their lifetime. Well-known figures like scientist Albert Einstein, actor Tom Hanks, and athlete Serena Williams have confessed to suffering with serious self-doubt. Today, I want to talk about the signs and causes of imposter syndrome, and think about some ways for us all to overcome it. So, what is imposter syndrome? Well, in the 1970s, psychologists Suzanne Imes and Pauline Rose Clance were the first to describe imposter syndrome, or the imposter phenomenon. In their study of high-achieving professional women in business, they discovered significant levels of self-doubt and imposter-like feelings. Imposter syndrome can be defined as a collection of feelings of inadequacy that persist despite evident success. In other words, if someone has imposter syndrome, they feel as if they are not good enough or not skilled, even though they are obviously capable and successful. No matter how successful or talented a person is, or how much proof or evidence exists of that person's capabilities, a person with imposter syndrome suffers from constant self-doubt. Imposter syndrome is different to other common issues like low self-esteem or lack of confidence. The reason imposter syndrome is different is because it affects successful people who are high achieving. In fact, imposter syndrome has been connected with perfectionism, and you can listen to my episode on perfectionism on the blog. I've linked it in the transcript. English learners, or language learners in general, often face situations where imposter syndrome can occur. I run conversation groups for Thinking in English listeners, and have had hundreds of people from around the world join, talk, and practice their English. Some of these people are incredibly talented English speakers, with great vocabularies, a good knowledge of grammar, and excellent accents. Despite this, the same people often tell me that they don't feel confident. They feel that their English is worse than others. They don't feel good enough. Even though they may have evidence of their talents, for example, exam results, my feedback, or the fact they can use the language easily every day, these people still feel like imposters. Some of the best, most talented English speakers I know, who use English every day in their work life, have told me they doubt themselves and their abilities. They feel like imposters, and one day their company, friends, and families will realize that they are an imposter. Even though they are incredibly talented and successful, the feeling of doubt never goes away. There are a few different signs of imposter syndrome. WebMD highlights 3 signs or symptoms. First, you believe you have fooled, misled, or tricked people into thinking you're more skilled than you are. This is where the name imposter syndrome comes from, the suggestion that you are an imposter or a fake. As a consequence, you may also be stressed or worried that people will discover you are an imposter. Of course, this will never happen, as you are successful and you are talented. But the sign of imposter syndrome is that you believe one day people will discover you are a fake and an imposter. And this is something I struggle with a lot. Second, you believe that your success is not due to your abilities. Perhaps you believe you are successful due to networking, other people's mistakes or misjudgments, or just luck. Believing that things you can't control are responsible for your achievements is a sign of imposter syndrome. And third, you may suffer from something known as the imposter cycle, and this is another thing I struggle with. The imposter cycle describes a pattern of feelings and emotions every time you do a task. So for me, every time I write a podcast. You may start the task with a lot of procrastination and feel a little anxiety. Then you quickly complete the task in a panic. Once you finish the task, you are happy. But when it comes to the next task, the same thing happens. There are a few different theories and ideas about the causes of imposter syndrome. First, the pressure to achieve in our modern society is clear. People today often measure their self-worth on what they have done in their life, and this can lead to high-achieving people not feeling good enough. Second, research suggests that parents have a large role in creating the conditions for imposter syndrome. One theory suggests that giving children labels, like calling one child the intelligent child, another child the artistic child, and a third child the sporty one, can have an effect. And third, imposter syndrome seems much more common in people who are different from their peers. For example, women working in engineering or tech, or the first person to attend university in a family. These people are much more likely to suffer from imposter syndrome. Now I've talked about imposter syndrome, how can you overcome it? How can you manage and deal with these feelings? Well, in searching for myself, I found some useful advice from WebMD and from the Harvard Business Review. So hopefully this advice is also useful to you guys as well. 1. Recognize and understand imposter feelings. If you know what these feelings are like, you'll be able to manage them. 2. Separate your feelings from reality. Once you recognize your imposter feelings, you can separate them. Think about what is real and evidence-based, and then think about what is in your mind. Focus on the real things. Focus on what is real and evidence-based. Stop comparing yourself to other people. A lot of self-doubt and anxiety is caused by comparing yourself with other people. I think this is a big cause of my imposter syndrome, and I'm trying hard to stop it. But it's difficult. I always compare my podcast, my content, my Instagram page, my website with other people. And I shouldn't do that, because I am myself and I can't just copy other people, even if other people might be making more money than me or have more followers than me. I need to concentrate on myself. Try to change the way you think. It is usual to doubt yourself, so remember this. It's not a bad thing to feel self-doubt. It's a bad thing to let self-doubt control your life. Talk with others. The more you talk with others about your feelings, the better it will be. And in fact, I've found a lot of support with thinking in English recently. I've just started working with 2 new people. Nathan from Nathan's Fantastic English and Thomas from Thomas W. Brock. Both of them you can find on Instagram, and they help with the conversation clubs, and they're running classes for thinking in English soon and doing lots of things to help me. And just having someone to talk to and say, oh, I don't know if I can do this. And they can tell me I can do it. They can give me support. Just telling other people your feelings is so much better. And finally, remember your successes and accomplishments. Remember that you are successful and you are good at English and you can speak, or at work you are talented, or at school you are intelligent. And remember this. And remember what you've achieved. Don't let your doubt creep in. Remember your successes. Hopefully this small amount of advice and the explanation of imposter syndrome can help any of you out there suffering from self-doubt and anxiety over your life, your English level, or anything really. So here is today's final thought. Imposter syndrome can be a problem for all people, and especially for language learners. We doubt ourselves and our abilities, even though we are successful and we can communicate. Hopefully, by talking about imposter syndrome, sharing my experiences, and giving some tips and advice on how to cope with imposter syndrome, you can all benefit. But let me know, have you ever felt like an imposter? leave a comment on Spotify, on Instagram, or on the Thinking in English blog. I'd love to know your experiences with feeling like an imposter. And talking about the Thinking in English blog, we completely renewed it over the winter. So go and have a look at the new Thinking in English blog. Check out, there's extra articles on there. It's much easier to move around, and soon we'll be adding more and more things over there as well. I run a conversation club for English learners. Join it, please. It's the Thinking in English Conversation Club. We do it 6 times a week, 3 times on Tuesday and 3 times on Thursday, at different time zones, of course. So this gives an opportunity for people from East Asia, people from Europe, and people from South America to all join. So please join. You'll be really helping Thinking in English, but more importantly, you're helping yourself improve your English, because the only way to practice speaking is to practice speaking. So join the conversation group and speak for at least 1 hour a week in English every week. You can join twice. Speak for 2 hours a week. We have other groups on there as well. You can practice messaging and writing. So join, come on. Links in the description. Join the Thinking in English Conversation Club. Also check out my YouTube channel and check out my Instagram page. And I've got Twitter. You can follow me on Twitter as well. Can't remember my Twitter name, but you'll find it. It's on the website. And I hope you all have a great day, and I'll see you next time. Goodbye.